This is Euronews Tonight. Here are your top stories. Russia bears down on southern Ukraine. The city of Kherson is captured and civilians in Mariupol are trapped as Russian forces bombard the strategic port city. President Zelensky tells Russia it will pay for what it's done.
You will reimburse us for everything you did against our state, against every Ukrainian, in full. And we will not forget anyone who died.
1 million Ukrainians become refugees of war in just a week as they seek safe haven in neighbouring countries. A united front, the EU agrees to grant temporary protection to Ukrainians forced to leave in an historic agreement.
And here in the Cube, we have the latest on the information war as one of Russia's oldest independent radio stations is shut down.
I'm Helena Humphrey. Thank you for being with us. The battle for Ukraine has ended its first week with reports that Russia is failing to achieve military supremacy over the Ukrainian army. Kherson remains the only major city to fall under Russian control. The port city in the south is a vital strategic target for Russian forces to control access to the Black Sea. Kherson officials say the Russian army has imposed a strict curfew and are only allowing cars carrying humanitarian aid to pass through. To the east, the mayor of Mariupol says his city is under siege. Heavy Russian shelling has cut off power and water to the area. The International Red Cross says that up to 4,000 people have been displaced from their homes and are now living in shelters. One mother made a desperate plea for help.
We have been here since the first day they started bombing. I have 7 children. I am alone. We came here with nothing. We get help here. We need food, clothes, batteries, and everything you need for everyday life. We will be grateful for any help you can offer us.
All right, so let's take a look at a map showing key battlegrounds in the fight for Ukraine. Well, Russian forces are reportedly having the most success to the south. The invading army has joined up with Russian separatist forces from the Donbass region in an attempt to create a land bridge to Crimea. Now, in the north, heavy shelling in Chernihiv on Thursday killed up to 22 people. Russian missiles have also continued to rain down on Kharkiv and the capital Kyiv. But Ukrainian officials maintain that the cities remain in the hands of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. In Kyiv, fighting has been concentrated in the city's suburbs to the north. Nearby towns of Borodyanka and Gorenka have seen significant damage. Intelligence reports say that a large Russian column advancing towards the city has been delayed due to staunch Ukrainian resistance and logistical problems. Well, amid heavy shelling in some of Ukraine's major cities, President Zelensky vowed that the damage inflicted by Russian forces will be repaired and that Moscow will foot the bill. In a video message to the nation, he praised the heroic resistance of his people and thanked allies for sending provisions. But as the damage and death toll continues to rise, Zelensky reaffirmed that Putin will pay for his actions.
We will restore every house, every street, every city, and we say to Russia, learn the word of reparations and contributions. You will reimburse us for everything you did against our state, against every Ukrainian, in full. And we will not forget anyone who died.
Well, as border crossings in Eastern Europe continue to accelerate, the EU has reached an agreement on a refugee protection initiative. Interior ministers meeting in Brussels have agreed on a temporary protection directive. Now, it's a scheme that waives lengthy asylum procedures and provides social protection. The proposal could be implemented in the coming weeks. 1 million refugees have now left Ukraine in just 7 days. Experts say this tally could increase 7-fold as the war continues. Well, in Brussels now, we can cross over to our correspondent, Effie Kutsa-Costa. Effie, good to see you. This directive is meant to provide the bloc with an efficient, a faster way to accommodate the influx of refugees that they're now seeing. How exactly would it work?
Exactly. This is the first time with a so unanimous way the ministers agree on this temporary protection directive, which aims, of course, at protecting and granting refuge and asylum to all these Ukrainian people that try to flee the war. Of course, this was first introduced in 2001 in the wake of the Balkan Wars, but since then it was never triggered, not even in 2015. This is the first time this happens, and it will give this law, when it becomes a law, it will give immediate rights to Ukrainians to live and work in the European Union and have access to education, healthcare and housing. Of course, this also can apply also to residents in Ukraine, long-term residents, but it's up to member states to decide if they will implement the directive or their national legislation. To discuss more on this, I'm joined here by the director of the European Council on Refugees, Mrs. Catherine Woolard. So, Mrs. Woolard, I would like a first comment on how this directive, this law will work, and if it's, of course, sufficient. Is it enough for the massive wave that Europe expects from Ukraine?
This is a very important decision that's been taken, essential even. It's important for the people fleeing Ukraine who will have immediate protection now. And it's also important for the member states because it's a way for them to cope with the situation and a way that prevents their asylum systems from becoming overloaded. Nonetheless, there are multiple other actions that need to be taken. The EU can support with emergency funding to the member states most affected. The EU Asylum Agency can deploy support and operations to support those countries. Humanitarian assistance should be provided to Ukraine and to Moldova. And above all, we want the EU to continue this approach of coordinating and unifying the member states. We've seen a collective response to the security challenges. We also need a collective response to the displacement challenge.
We've seen the United Nations Agency for Refugees said that in 1 week it was 1 million Ukrainians that crossed the borders. So how many people are we waiting for? And of course, this unanimity that we've seen will pave the way also to bring back the quota system. Where these people will go?
So first of all, we're looking at anywhere between 2.5 million and 4 million people fleeing Ukraine arriving in the short term. So these are huge numbers. It's very unpredictable because the actions of Russia and of President Putin are themselves highly unpredictable. We have members working in all the countries just across the border, providing support, waiting for, and we also have members in Ukraine. And everybody is doing the maximum to have adaptable responses, depending on what the numbers are. In terms of the quotas, the Temporary Protection Directive allows for solidarity mechanism and sharing of responsibility among the member states. We are urging the EU member states, wherever they are geographically, to step in and support the countries most affected. This includes through funding, this includes through sending experts, but it also includes through reception, basically hosting, relocating people where that's the right decision. Clearly, in this displacement crisis, many Ukrainians want to be with their family and friends. For those who don't have those networks, states should be providing, and that's where we also need all member states to continue to show solidarity.
So, Mrs. Willard, thank you very much for this interview. As Mrs. Willard from the European Council on Refugees said, the situation is very unpredictable, but a massive wave is, of course, expected, and the EU seems to be united on this. So, back to you.
All right, Effie Kutsakosta there in Brussels. Effie, thanks for breaking that down for us. Well, specially chartered trains have been arriving at Berlin's main train station from the Polish border, carrying hundreds of Ukrainian refugees. And since Sunday, Deutsche Bahn has allowed them to make the journey free of charge. So for more, let's go live to Berlin. We can speak to Anna Noroskiewicz. Anna, good to see you. Now, I understand that you were at Berlin's main train station earlier as people were arriving. Tell me about what you saw, how people were doing.
Hi, Helena. So we were there last night as well, and the whole morning and the early afternoon. And as you said, there are these special trains arriving, which are absolutely overcrowded. Just now, actually half an hour ago, 800 people arrived, 800 more people arrived from Poland. The nice thing and the good thing to see is that it's quite well organized with NGOs and volunteers and also Deutsche Bahn staff members who who lead you through the ways of the central station and to a special corner where people can get basic necessities, supply, food, and of course information if they tend to travel to further destinations in Europe and or in Germany. And so it is well organized and quite moving to see how many people and how many German and Berlin residents were mobilized to assist.
So, Anna, once they have arrived at Berlin main train station, and what happens then? Where do they go?
So as I mentioned, there are lots of volunteers, Russian, Ukrainian-speaking, Polish-speaking volunteers who lead them to a registration point. And there are lots of volunteers and hotel owners and just Berlin residents who say, I can take in a family with 2 children for 4 weeks, or we're willing to give up our bedroom to host a family. And I'm, in fact, are now in a hotel. We came here to interview the owner, who very early when the invasion started put out a post and said, I want to offer my hotel to arriving Ukrainian refugees. And it's a 5-story apartment building, and 3 stories are offered to Ukrainian refugees. And now I spent here the half of the afternoon, and people are arriving and being offered help. So it's lovely to see, how people are helping.
It sounds like a very warm welcome there, but of course Germany has gone through a similar situation before, hasn't it, Anna? After or during the war in Syria, when it welcomed a large number of refugees. So I wonder, what is the feeling kind of overall in Germany now as Ukrainians arrive in the country?
Compared to 2015, it is a different feeling, because you see that there's no political debate about migration, opening its borders, helping people if people are actually really needing help and seeking refuge, or if they come for economic purposes. You don't have these debates at all, which is different to what we've seen in 2015, where we had right-wing populist parties really heating up these debates. So right now you can see that the majority of Germans and the majority of people that you see in the street are now, they know that action is needed, and action of each and every resident is needed. So it is definitely different than it was in 2015.
All right, Anna Noryskiewicz in Berlin. Good to talk to you, Anna. Thank you. This is Euronews Tonight. Thanks for joining us. Well, Monika Pinner is in the city of Przemysł in southeastern Poland, and it's close to the Ukrainian border and has become a major gateway for refugees heading out of conflict areas. We can speak to her now, hopefully. There she is.
Yes,
okay,
good
Monika,
evening.
good to... Do go ahead. Tell us what you're seeing there.
Yes. Good evening. Yes, I'm at the station. I've been here for the past 2 days in this area, and refugees coming in tell about incredibly long and exhausting journeys. They are coming from all corners of Ukraine, and some of them say that they haven't eaten or slept for days, for 2, 3, 4 days even. They are still, they still can't believe what's happening in their country. Some told me that they were asked several times to lie down on the floor of the trains because they were crossing dangerous areas, and the lights also were switched off several times. So they are very worried, extremely worried and shaken for all the family members that they left behind. I spoke with many women they're left in Ukraine, fathers, boyfriends, husbands. They stay there to fight. I also met an elderly lady, a retired doctor, who told me she would go back because she wanted to support her grandson who was stuck in one of the cities heavily bombed by the Russian forces.
We thought
it beyond the institutions. We started with the heart, beyond our roles. We already have a contact who is inside Medica and can't get out of Ukraine. We will meet in a neutral zone, she said. We are waiting for her to call now to deliver them. She will take them to the heart of the war. She decided to stay, and so she can go back and forth doing these trips.
And so, as you could hear, there are incredible examples of solidarities here. And I'm actually standing close to piles of shoes, clothes, and Ukrainians, so refugees, are coming here just to look for what they might need, because many have left almost everything behind.
All right, Monika Pina in the Polish city of Przemysł in southeastern Poland. It's good to talk to you. Thank you. Well, the International Criminal Court has launched an investigation against Russia's actions in Ukraine. Dozens of ICC members petitioned the court to immediately start proceedings as reports of civilian areas being targeted increased. And I want to bring in Wayne Jordash now, an expert in international humanitarian law and managing partner of Global Rights Compliance law firm. Welcome to the programme. It's good to have you with us. Now that the ICC has opened this investigation, and as an expert in the field yourself, what are the first things on the ground that we've seen so far that you expect them to perhaps to start collecting evidence on?
Well, I think there is a vast array of war crimes being committed. There's no doubt in my mind. We have everything from the attacking of civilians directly, including Russian soldiers shooting peaceful protesters, including Russian soldiers shelling buses, attacking of civilian objects generally, from art galleries to health institutions to educational establishments. We have attacking using indiscriminate bombs, cluster bombs, and so on and so forth. So the ICC prosecutor has a lot to choose from. What he has to do, though, is decide what is a priority, and that's a difficult question. But what I would expect him to do is to liaise with a range of actors, from the Prosecutor General in Ukraine to civil society actors to open source experts to military analysts to international criminal lawyers like myself, and focus in on certain incidents which are the most damaging, which are the most dangerous, and which must be prioritized.
You've just given me a long list of examples there, and I do wonder, we know that many countries wait a very long time to see leaders have their day or days or months in court at the ICC, and we also know that Russia isn't a member, so extradition would be necessary. So with all that in mind, do you think this is a deterrent to Putin?
My fear is, of course, that Putin will not be deterred by anything other than his own people rising up and demanding that he stops. However, the international community should do what it can do to deter, and the ICC prosecution and prosecution also at the national level should be forwarded and progressed, investigated, and when the suspects, when Putin or when his many enablers can be caught, they can be put on trial. The important thing is to preserve the evidence now. Will it deter him in the short term? I don't know. Will it act as accountability for people who are really suffering in Ukraine? Then I think in the long term it will.
You mentioned his enablers. I just want to pick up on that, because when we actually talk about war crimes and accountability, it's not necessarily just talking about President Putin and his regime, is it? It is people who have responsibility for carrying out war crimes on the ground. And in this case, it could mean members of the military currently in Ukraine, as I understand it.
Well, absolutely. There's no doubt from what Putin has said and from the control he clearly exhibits over the military and also the finances and the supply of weapons and the policy that is perpetrating these war crimes, that he controls and is ultimately the one most responsible. But there are many, many, many others, from military personnel to the financiers, the oligarchs, to those on the ground, individual soldiers who can be and should be prosecuted. It's not only Putin who's committed these serious crimes. It's a range of people, and these are very, very, very serious crimes.
All right, Wayne Jordish, an expert in international humanitarian law. Great to have your insights. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back. Good to have you along. Twitter has become the latest social media platform to block the accounts of Russian state-controlled media amid the war in Ukraine. It comes after an order by the European Union to combat online disinformation. Matthew in the Cube has the latest.
Well, Helena, in 2022, this Russian invasion of Ukraine is being documented online and on social media more than any other recent conflict. This online war of propaganda and misinformation has seen many media organisations being shut down. Twitter was the latest big tech company to take action. On Thursday, it said that it would block 2 Russian state-controlled channels, RT and Sputnik, in the European Union. This came after an EU ban on both of these organisations, accusing them of being instruments of Russian disinformation. Meta, who own Facebook as well as Google and TikTok, had already taken this action, while Apple had blocked RT and Sputnik from its app store outside of Russia. Now, amid the war in Ukraine, state media has continued to portray the Kremlin narrative, that this is supposedly a military operation to try and denazify a failed state. Despite the fact that those claims are unfounded, we are still seeing state-controlled media ignoring shelling on many civilian areas in some of Ukraine's largest cities. RT has said that this ban on them and other state media is an infringement of press freedom rights. But at the same time, independent media in Russia have long said that they are also facing an unprecedented threat. On Thursday, one of the country's oldest radio stations, the Echo of Moscow, was ordered to shut down. Russia says that this and other independent channels are, in their words, spreading extremist acts of violence and fake news about the war in Ukraine. And it's efforts like this that seem to show that Russia is trying to prevent any independent information from reaching ordinary Russian citizens. Francis Scar, who's a journalist who's been monitoring Russian state TV for the BBC, even says that some Russian state television channels have been telling people to trust none of the images that they're seeing online about the war in Ukraine. So, Helena, you can see there is a continual effort by the Kremlin to control what people are watching, reading and listening to about this invasion on Ukrainian territory, while at the same time, the West is also trying to step up efforts to combat Russian propaganda.
All right, well, Matthew in the Cube, good to have your reporting. You are watching Euronews tonight. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.